This is Short Hammer. It is the 30th of May, 2022, and this is Trading Zones. So we're taking a peek over here at the RTY. Last week we had the run of all runs, right? Nice little bounce back in the market. And I think the overall question is what's changed? Um, has there been a change in interest rates? Has the Fed decided that they're no longer going to raise rates? No. Has there been a change in inflation? Has inflation gone down? Not to my knowledge. Has there been a change in oil prices? Maybe. Has there been a change in the Russia-Ukraine conflict? No. So what has changed that caused this market rally? And I think that what you have to remember is that sometimes you have these technical bounces and sometimes you have levels and sometimes you have pullbacks, right? And so rather than call this a rally, and I guess that's like a broad definition for when the market goes up for multiple days, right? I'll just say be careful as you're positioning and keep an eye on the money that's flowing into the market, right? Because that's really usually your sign is when just a bunch of money begins to flow into the market and people are really building and spending and getting huge positions, and they're positioning for for a big move. Everybody wants to make money, right? And so just be careful. I don't want anyone to get caught up thinking that we're now in a bull market or any of that. So if I'm looking at this, definitely like the move up. It was beautiful. Now where are we? So let's look at the chart. So we can flip this to the daily if we want to look at a bigger time frame. And it's like we're just trying to curve. This is the RTY. We're just trying to curve out of this, extreme selling. And if we're looking at this, looks like the next level is roughly about the 1940s through the 1950s. So like 1954 is what we need to get through here. We'll see how that shakes out. But good movement. And so the question that, if we get through those 1950s, then it'll open up here up into the 1990 area, and then above that into the 2000s, right? And so the question here is we're entering the month of June. And I'm not sure how active it's going to be, so we could easily drift back down. So be careful. Don't get caught. Don't get caught holding a bag. Don't get caught believing that the market, momentum has changed. We've definitely bought back up, but I wouldn't assume that this buy up is necessarily that the market is now turned bullish, right? So just be careful. So if I'm looking at this and where we are, for me, on any pullbacks, because of how strong the buying was, I would look to see if people step in around 1882. That's one level I would watch. The next level I would watch would be here, which is like the 1863 level. And here, the 1829 level. I actually like this 1829 level most of all. And I'm not saying that we're going to retrace to that in any capacity, right? It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you look, the last time we came up, we sort of had a hitch in that area between this 1843 and 1829, right? So this time we come up, we push a little higher, but we pull back, and that area where we sold through, this 1829 area, the buyer stepped in and we bought out of that area and we broke higher, right? And so that's an interesting thing to watch for. If we back test into this area, the 1840s by the 1820s, I would keep an eye on that area to see if that's an area where buyers step in. Um, if you're looking for a higher area to get in, we can look right around here. What's this? The 1870s. And if you look at the 1870s, you see that we've had some reversals from roughly about the 1st of May through the 2nd of May. That was an area. Then the 5th of May through the 6th of May, that was also an area. So we definitely want to keep an eye on that if we do go back into those 1870s to see if buyers are there also. Um, and if we don't happen to pull back and we continue to buy up, we definitely have levels to watch from the 1910s to the 1925s up here into the 1940s are the next levels that we would be watching to see if we're going to continue on the way up. And 1950s too. If you look at this area where we tried to buy out of them here, and we couldn't quite get out of it. So on the sell, tried to get out of the 1950s, sold back down. Then we had a little bit of buying, got us back up right into the 1950s, and then we sold back down, couldn't quite break through there. So we want to see if this is going to get us through that area also. So that's another interesting area to watch in RTY. Also, if you're trading financials or small caps, you definitely want to keep a side eye on the RTY to see how the overall index is moving, right? So that's something to keep an eye on also. So that's just my opinion. But we are definitely uptrending, and it was a strong move up. And sometimes you just follow the trend until the trend stops working. And regardless of what people may think, right? And what the news stories are telling you, if there's a trend in the market where the buyers are buying and a trend where the sellers are selling, just follow that till it stops working. We don't have to overcomplicate the process, right? And so if we're looking here at the MES, similar setup, we bought out of this area, and let's see, we want to, yeah, so that's the first area. That's cool. We'll stop at this line, 4203. The next area that we want to watch, if we can get to it, would be up here around the 4290s. And what you see here to the left is back on the 25th of April, the 28th of April, and the 4th of May through the 5th of May. That was an area that we really had a lot of trouble getting through. So if we're able to get through the 4203 area into the 4240s, then up here into the 4280s, then we really want to be careful into those 4290s, like right around 4300s, and trying to break up into that area. That's an area to really keep a side eye on if we can get through those 4300s, because the last few times that we got there, there were sellers there, right? And we did happen to break through this area here, right around the 4090s into the 4100s. And we got a nice little push out of that area. But what we want to just remember is that we did end the week on a break of that area, but we could retrace and test that area before we go higher. We have to imagine that, quite a few people may have missed this run. So if there's going to be strong continuation, usually technically you want to pull back into a level where more buyers can get in to fuel the next leg higher. That's usually, from my opinion, what I want to see in a breakout, especially a multi-day breakout. But be careful. And what you want to check is see the positioning people are taking. Like if people are positioning higher, expecting this to push, or are people positioning now in puts expecting a retrace? So all these things are interesting, and it just depends on your risk profile and also the time frames that you check and your time horizon, right? Like if you can be in something for 3 weeks or a month or 4 months, what you look at as far as your charts and your levels is very different than someone that's in something for a few minutes. And that's something that's really interesting to think about in your trading or in whoever you're listening to when they're giving you their insights in the market. They may not necessarily be wrong, but they may be wrong for you just based on your trading style, your personality type, and also your time horizon. So that's something to consider. So let's see, because the futures are still dancing around. Let's see if we get a gap close back into the close on Friday on either overnight session or Tuesday. I think that'd be interesting to see. Or do we have strength in volume and push higher? I think a lot of these tickers are in areas where if we went higher, people wouldn't be surprised, but they also wouldn't be surprised if we happen to retrace. I think none of those things would be a surprise at this moment or at this point, just based on how the market's been moving. So even looking at the MNQ, looks like on the 4 hour, we went right up against the 200 and we pulled back. Definitely, you can see where it broke below here. We're back above that, so we're back to here. So the question would be, could we rise out of this area, the 12,730s? Could we rise out of the 12,720s? Could we rise out of this area and go up into the 13,100s and test that level? That would be interesting. 13,170. Yeah, that would be interesting, right? And that's something to keep an eye on if we get, bullish continuation. And if people jump in, let's drop this down to the 1 hour. Let's look at the 4 hour. On the 1 hour, nice little pullback here. Yep, just got to get through this area, all through this 12,820s, this lower area here, 12,719, 12,720s. That's what we want to watch. Want to see if we can get a break. So a break above this 12,870s would be interesting if we can get a squeeze. Maybe 1300s, but we have to wait to see. As you can see, there's a lot of action, a lot of turbulence in this area. Then it opens up a little bit. We have a little bit of wiggle room. But just be careful in tech, right? Because what were the leading factors for tech to sell? Rise in interest rates, the cost of refinancing debt would be higher. Also, guiding down because of the Fed tightening and raising interest rates. Their goal is to lower inflation. That means that with higher interest rates, the purchasing power of the consumer and the purchasing momentum for the consumer should go down, right? If you had to pay more interest or more, you're paying more to hold debt, right? And you're purchasing, a lot of people are purchasing things with credit cards and loans. The chances of you going out and just buying things and just paying more for them as far as interest rates is lower. Like you why would you be motivated to spend more for the same thing? And so I think it's an interesting dynamic that we did bounce. But what that means, I have no clue. Technically I know what it means, but from a fundamental standpoint, I'm not sure what that means or what has been the change in the market that now we should believe that we can run back up into the highs, right? So be careful with your trading and make sure you have your stops in and you trade level to level. But let's watch. Let's see if we can hold the 12,720s and if we can push into the 1300s, because that to me is the interesting setup. But we'll see, right? We'll see. But you can see the curve. You can see us breaking all those lower levels as we're pushing back up. I think that's really interesting. And now if we look over at Amazon on the 1 hour chart, so on the 1 hour chart, and we'll go, higher, but look back at May 17th, right? That area we rejected. We're right back there now. Look at this, how we're curving up into that area, right? It looks like a big W pattern, right? But we have to see how this plays out. I think it'd be great if this is a W pattern and we could run up into the 2600s. That'd be beautiful. But I'm not when it comes to the trading, I'm not a hopeful person. I just had to look at sort of the setup. So I'm watching the 2318s See if we get above 23.18, then watch the rise into the purple pivot here at 23.60s. And if we manage to get above that area into the 2400s, then I'm watching to see if we are able to get traction through the upper 2300s to 2380s and 90s. And if we get into the 2400s, if we happen to retrace, the first area I'll be watching will be the 2290s, then the 2250s, and then below that we're down here into the 2180s. But I would expect that anywhere in here that the buyers would step in and give us a retrace here of a few points. And so watching this closely, still wondering why just everything ran up, right? Unless there's information that's going to come out this week that's going to justify that. So I think it's really interesting that Amazon bounced this past week. You know, not complaining about the money that we made off of it, but sometimes you do want to question why, to understand if the move that's happening is sustainable. And I'm not sure how much longer this will be sustainable, because at some point the data has to back up the movements. You can't just move with no data to back it up. There has to be some sort of forthcoming information to explain, or some information that maybe I have not seen yet, that explains why we ran up so aggressively. So definitely want to watch these levels. Head on over to Microsoft. Oh, that's weird. Boom. Dun, dun, dun. And looks like Microsoft is a little bit stronger than a few other tickers. And looking at where we closed Friday, Microsoft was off to the races. So one of the things we mentioned last week in our last video was you kind of got to dig into the earnings report to see what Microsoft is forecasting, to be able to determine sort of which direction it's going to go. And Microsoft is notorious for selling after earnings and then buyers stepping in and riding it back up if the guidance was great. So I didn't dig into it. I really have not had the time. It's been busy. But for those that are trading Microsoft on a daily basis, or investors in Microsoft, it's definitely something to keep an eye on, to see what was that guidance? What were they saying? What were they projecting? And so if we're watching these levels here, we were talking about, I believe, the 251s into the 257s. And we saw a rise through that to the 263s was the next level we were watching for. We rose through that through the 267s. Now we're all the way up here in the 270s, getting ready to test the 276s. We saw this little hitch here that we had back on the 10th of May and on the 11th of May, where we sold below this area. So it's almost like the same type of a scoop. You know what I mean? Like almost a W pattern that we're trying to push through here from that date. So we have to see how this shakes out on Microsoft. And this is the thing, though we always expect a pullback, just if you are not going to wait for the pullback, make sure that you're trading on whatever that day's levels are. And as far as the trend area that you're watching, make sure you're trading with that with a good stop in, right? Because we don't know. If we pull back, I'd watch the 271 70s or 271s for the first hitch, then maybe the 267s if we continue to pull back. If we continue to buy up, 276 is the next area we're watching, then 278.80s, then 283.60s. But definitely very interesting on Microsoft as far as the setup. Netflix was definitely dying a death and a half. Buyers definitely just all these things have bought up, right? And so for Netflix, it has so far to go, but you know, we have the 204 level and definitely above those 180s, but we have the 204 level. I will be careful on Netflix and watch your levels closely. If I'm watching this, right? This is on a 1 hour. Let me flip this to a 4 hour so I can get a little bit more. But all these stocks and Netflix, right? If you're looking at all the other things that we looked at, Netflix looks like it's been stronger than those other tickers, right? And it's probably because of the sell off from the earnings, right? But if you're saying that this is like a W like pattern of some sort, like this area into here, Netflix was never did make the lower lows from the 18th of May onwards that a lot of other tickers did, right? And it's like back on the 12th is when Netflix had a strong dip to a low, yeah, look like a swing low here. So definitely keep an eye on this. Definitely want to see if the buyers are behind this, if we can get a nice squeeze. But we want to get through this little plateau here at 204.50s. And then we want to see where we can go on Netflix. If we don't get that, then we could watch for a pullback. And we want to see if the buyers step in at any point and if volume is increasing. I still think Netflix is in a little bit of trouble, but that's just me. Apple, same thing, but you see how different from Netflix. Apple made a lower low on the 20th of May than the previous swing low area here. That's just, when you're looking at the last month or so, these time frames. So we're up against the one. It says 149.97. Here's the line. Looks like we're about to squeeze through there. But we have to see. Let's see if the buyers are gonna give us a little bit of run through here up into the 160s. That'd be beautiful, like 158.60s. We'll see. If we reject, and it's funny, right? What if this turns out to be more of like a channeling area, and we sort of bounce around between the 130s and the 150s for quite some time, or at least one or two more times? That'd be interesting. So definitely want to see if we continue to buy here, or if we're going to open up gapped up way up here because of what the futures did. That's something else to watch for. Do we open up gapped up, and from that gap, do we continue to buy? Do we see a pullback into it to give other people that did not swing an opportunity to get in? So that's going to be interesting to watch on Apple. Also, you want to take a look at Apple suppliers and see what their suppliers are guiding, right? If they're guiding that they're going to need to increase production, that's a good sign for Apple. Apple definitely does, I'll say at least moderately better when their Genius bars are open and they're able to sell more accessories. The accessories business has been huge for Apple. So that's something also to look for. But as of now, just watching these levels that I just mentioned, and we'll see how this plays out if we continue to bounce. Facebook. So we are above the 191 area. Looks like we're pushing toward the 198. We have to see what next week looks like. But if we can crest 198, that does open up this 202-ish area. The next area is the 210, which is an area that I would personally want to get above if I'm bullish. I want buying above the 210. But let's see what happens here, right? We definitely have some action where we've gone to the 198 and we've reversed. We've had even higher movements here up through the 200s, lower 200s. Looks like 201-ish that we tested, and we still could not hold. So we'll see how that shakes out here with these levels. And if we retrace lower to 184s or 179s, and also see if we gap up, right? We could open up here in the 208. So we wanted to see on Facebook. Just keep in mind that they are not just an ad company, but what they have going on with Meta and the metaverse, and how they're working hard to carve out their piece of it. And so we'll see. I think that the Facebook's pivot was pretty brilliant, and now they have even more options on the table of ways to make money. Let's keep going. NVDA. So it almost looks like if you're going back to the 12th of May, and comparing to the 25th, that dip and the buyer stepped in. And if we're looking at this objectively, right? There's on the 4-hour candle, there's no selling continuation below the 157.80s. Just doesn't exist. Like there's just, you're not seeing that follow on bar, but the buyers did step in. Just be careful in thinking that the market may have flipped, and remain cautious and remain small in size. Except for those plays where you feel super confident in them and you like the setups. But let's see what happens with NVIDIA with chips being up. This is interesting. Let's see if the narrative on chips is that I know there was a mention that supply is still short and the demand is still high. So chips should be going up, but we'll see how this plays out on Tuesday. Let's see. Yep. Tesla. Buyers definitely stepped in because see the 617 crested 651s, 713s, more buying. We're approaching the 780s. I'm not too bullish on Tesla. I don't see a reason to be right now. And so once we get up to the 780s, we'll see what the buyers or sellers say. And we may be gapped up to that area at this point, but we have to wait and see how it shakes out. And then position ourselves accordingly. But these are the levels that I'm watching on Tesla. It's like we're uptrending all the little all the little back tests. It just kept going. So definitely watching it up against here. Let's see if we open on from the gap up here around 780s or higher. That will be something to watch there. We look at the daily. That's sharp. Mm-hmm. That's sharp. Even with this pullback, look how deep this selling was. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see how that plays out. Got here. I'm looking at the SPY here. See. Okay, 416, 417. It's a lot of levels in here. We have to see if we get through. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Nice little push. All right. Yep, but everything looks like we're squeezing up. Just be cautious. Even looking at the SPY. We may gap be above the 418s or into the 420s at the open on Tuesday, and we could also pull back some. If we happen to pull back, definitely keep an eye on the 403 area and seeing if buyers step in there. And you might get a hitch anyway from the 407 down to about the 406s. So that's an area to watch. 407 through 40. Where are we? Yeah. 407, 406, 405. So that's definitely something to watch. Let's see if we keep going and what the volume looks like on this. But I would definitely take it light at the beginning of the week just to test and see if we're beginning a rally. I don't think so, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, or it might not. That it's not a possibility. But watching these levels, we'll see. I just don't know where the news changed. Even looking at the QQQ, nice break. It's downtrend. But we have to wait to see exactly where it's headed. I think it's really interesting here. So this is going to be a really interesting week. Size down if you're unsure, and take your time and leg into the week. That would be my my humble opinion. If you like this video, please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, Power of Pivots, where you can look forward to receiving not just videos from me, but videos from Elisa as she shows how she utilizes her Power of Pivot script and setup to be able to find great pre-market, intraday, and post-market trades. Thank you so much for your time. Please, remain safe and keep your family safe. And we'll see you next week.